Welcome back to the Ugly Chairs podcast. I am going to introduce you to our guest today. So I would love for you guys to tell everybody your name and what campus you're from and a fun fact.
Yeah, we do it. Do you want to go first or me?
Yeah. No, I'll jump right in.
All right.
My name is Amy McGinnis, and I attend the Clark Summit campus, and I'm a small group leader there for girls that are juniors in high school. And a fun fact about me, actually, I met my husband when we were 7, which is kind of a fun fact, but it goes on beyond there. Not only did we meet when we were 7.
That's wild.
We got married, and
At 10?
That's what I was waiting.
No, we waited a few years, but we also are cousins.
What? Wait, hold on.
How do we not unpack this the whole time? Where do we go from here?
Yes.
So like
So
just
it's-
like cousins?
It's not as weird as you imagine it to be, actually. So we got married. My grandmother, who was widowed, and my husband's grandfather, who was widowed, met at our rehearsal dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And a year later, they got married.
Oh, so like you weren't cousins
No.
before. Okay.
No. So through marriage. So my grandmother and his grandfather married each other. And so now that makes our moms stepsisters, I guess.
That's
And us cousins.
This is the best start to a podcast that we've
Yes.
had. That's my favorite.
that's so funny.
I don't know how I'm gonna follow that.
Yeah, no.
There's nothing more interesting than that. But my name's Caleb. I'm from the Mannheim campus. The best fun fact that I can think of is that I have a fanny pack collection.
What's your favorite?
What's my favorite?
Like a crossbody or like legit
Okay.
fanny pack?
Like legit fanny pack, like old school.
Amazing.
Because like I started this collection before the crossbody fanny pack thing became a thing. Honestly, it's a whole bunch of random ones that people gave me because they knew about this. So like none of them are like particularly significant. It's just a real mosh podge of fanny packs. It's kind of weird, but also kind of entertaining.
Yeah. But you started it yourself.
I did. Yeah. And I don't even know how. I think I just woke up one day. I was like, yeah, fanny packs are cool. Let's do it.
In what context are you wearing these?
Usually just at camp, like student ministry camp during the summer.
That like checks out.
The typical usage there. Yep.
I didn't know if it was just like you're like going to the grocery store, you got the coupons in there.
You know, have I done that? Perhaps. It's not a usual thing. That was also in my nunchuck era. I had nunchucks for a while. That was pretty cool. College was a weird time. I bought nunchucks and I got pretty good at them.
I'm just like imagining you with like a neon pink fanny pack and nunchucks just walking around a college campus.
You just met college Caleb.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
That's a real timepiece.
Wow.
Yep.
Nice.
That's now I can't have a better fun fact than either of those. I'm Allie. I'm from the Harrisburg campus. And a fun fact about me is that I had pet crayfish growing up.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How many?
I had a lot. Like when they would die, I would just go back to the creek and get another one.
So these are naturally sourced crayfish. You're not going to the pet store for these guys.
No. You just go to the creek and get
What do you feed what does crayfish care look like?
I think I just fed them like fish food. Or like
Did they eat it?
yeah. Or like little pellets of something.
Do they live in the water?
Yeah.
They have to be underwater.
Yeah.
All the
Okay.
time?
Yes.
Did you read a book about crayfish to do this? I feel like you were just grabbing crayfish and putting them in a bucket and being like, yeah, I have friends. Yeah, it's like
No,
that.
that was it. No, I think like the one time my dad was fishing and I like lifted up a rock and then the crayfish like shot out and probably like pinched me. And then I was like, you're my friend now. Let's go put you in a tank.
Here we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And I'm picturing it, and that makes it better.
Yeah. Just like 8-year-old Allie really enjoying having pet crayfish. My sister was allowed to have fish. I wasn't. But I could have crayfish, so.
So just to be clear, this isn't current?
No.
Okay. Because
No.
that would be even better.
I mean, like, I wouldn't not have a crayfish now, but
Here for it.
I just feel like I'm a little too old to be doing that.
Nah, I'll buy you one. It'll be
You
great.
could get fish now, though.
Yeah.
You're allowed.
Yeah,
to
that
get fish
seems
now.
more socially acceptable. Fish are kind of expensive, though. But, yeah. Anyway, that's my fun fact. Not better than fanny packs or marrying your cousin. But it's fine. So today we're talking all about stress. And I'd love to hear just a story from high school where you guys just experienced a lot of stress or went through a really stressful time. Maybe it was like around getting onto a team or a play or grades.
Yeah. There's a bunch that come to mind for me. So I don't know that I have one particular story, but just like a lot of different experiences come to mind. I feel like high school was the time that I don't know, like I was more cognizant of just being stressed, like earlier in life, middle school and stuff like that. Like I would probably articulate that I had a bad day or something like that, but I don't think I would have said like I'm stressed out. But in high school, I remember managing the pressure to perform, whether it be academically or in athletics, whatever. I remember that being the first time experiencing like real relational tension between friends and needing to sort through all that kind of thing. And then probably the third one that comes to mind more like seriously kind of rises to the top would be like late high school, starting to figure out what in the world I wanted to do with my life and being like, wow, this is like my first actual big decision where I feel like I could mess this up. And that just like carried a certain weight with it too. So that's probably from me.
Yeah, I feel the same way in just, thinking about the end of high school and thinking about, okay, wow, I have to think about what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And even just, I lived in the same house. I was born and raised in the same house. We never moved. So I wasn't used to a lot of transition. Even just that transition of leaving my support system and heading off into the unknown, not bringing, any support with me was huge. I think that was really stressful. Other times, I think just relationally in my home sometimes, I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram number 9. And so I'm a peacemaker. So conflict is, I run away from conflict. I try to avoid conflict at all costs.
What are you?
I'm a 6.
6. I'm a 1.
Oh, okay. So I'm a 9 wing 1.
Okay.
Perfectionist.
This is fun. I didn't know this was
Yeah.
there. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So no, conflict is huge for me. So if there's conflict, I get stressed. I get really overwhelmed with that. And there was a point in my high school years where my sister kind of met some guy. We didn't know him at all. And she just decided, I'm running away and getting married. Wow. And so it was like I was hurt and sad by like the loss of connection. And at that time, I'm dating myself, but there were no cell phones, so it wasn't as easy to stay connected.
And how old were you then?
I was a sophomore in high school. Wow. And so she kind of ran away, and the conflict that came in my house from that was just really rough. So that was a very overwhelming, emotional time for me, but like the stress of conflict, I think, was big.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the first times that I really like noticed how overwhelming stress was in my life was in high school. I did like the production side of our musicals, so kind of like any marketing or promotion kind of stuff. That was what I was in charge of. And I was completely in charge of our dinner theater. So like after one of the nights of the musical, everybody could go and we would completely transform our cafeteria into like, you wouldn't know it was a high school cafeteria.
Wow.
And it was like kind of over the top. Like imagine at the movies,
dude,
in your like high school cafeteria.
This sounds so cool.
But it's huge to be like kind of in charge of that.
Yeah. And I was in charge of it. Like I had to set up the menu and the theme and decorations and get people and like ice sculptures and bands and all of this stuff.
You say
as
ice
a high
sculptures?
school student.
Yeah. Yeah, as a high school student.
Wow.
And I didn't like pick to do it. Someone was just like, hey, I think you can do this. Yeah. You're doing it. And I remember my junior year, it was like the week of the musical, which basically meant I was only leaving school to like sleep.
Oh my
and it was
goodness,
like maybe 6 hours. Like, I think we were actually there more than the kids in the musical, but don't tell them I said that.
Yep.
But there was like one day when we were supposed to have all these volunteers coming in to like prep all the food and start like putting up our decorations. And I guess like an email that I like scheduled to go out just like didn't go out.
Man.
Because I was like 15. Like, I don't know how to.
Yeah, you're describing this and I'm
mail
like sweating.
merge.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm already feeling stressed.
Yeah. I just remember like the teacher who was in charge was like, hey, Allie, just want you to know. This was like, I was in my like science class and he like sends me a message and is like, nobody showed up today. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to
you
cry.
just get that feeling in your gut. You're like,
I'm like, I just failed my chemistry test and now this is happening.
Oh
Like, I
my.
cannot function. And I just remember like sitting there and I just like started to like, I didn't even cry. Like, my eyes were just like watering. My teacher was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, no, but like, it'll be fine eventually.
but here I am.
Like, next week, this will all be done. Whether it happens or not, next week, this is not my problem.
Oh my, yeah.
And it was just really overwhelming. And I had no idea, like, how to manage my stress because I was 16 doing, like, a legit adult's job.
Yeah.
I don't know how I did that, but I managed.
Having like
You
flashbacks right now.
survived. Yeah.
I am. And, like, the news was supposed to come, and I was
Nope.
like, oh, gosh.
Nope.
Like, it's going to be all over the news that I'm a failure.
Oh no.
The headline. Allie is a failure. No, but those are the kind of
15-year-old screws up big time.
Oh no.
But those are the things that you play in your mind in those
Yes.
situations because it's so
Yes.
easy for your thoughts to get so dark when stress starts to come on, and honestly, it only compounds and makes it worse. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You totally go to extremes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like, I'm either like, oh, it's fine, or the world is crumbling
Yes.
around me.
Yep.
Yes.
Like, there's no in between in my mind.
Which is very much an Enneagram 6.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. The nice thing is, I was like, worst case scenario, only like 300 people are disappointed with me.
Oh,
No
man.
big deal.
It's so dark.
Yeah, my brain's super fun. I love it. So I guess we're going to kind of break down like what happens in all of our lives when stress kind of creeps in. And it does weigh on us, especially me, because it like goes a little crazy in my brain. But I'd kind of love to know, like, what are some things that you guys do when you get weighed down by stress? Like, what kind of happens in your life? And maybe, like, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, I definitely have some go-to unhealthy ways that I handle stress. Like, I'm very much an isolator, just kind of like turn into myself and, don't want to be around people, which is, there's good to that because if I am around people when I'm overwhelmed and stressed, I'm like, not a really pleasant person to be around. So, it's not healthy for me to isolate, but at the same time, I think I protect some people when I do that because I can be super short, super like attacking if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I just have a real low patience for anything that goes wrong.
Yeah.
Beyond that, yeah.
I relate with what you're saying a ton, and honestly, I think I'd articulate it almost the exact same way of when I'm stressed, I have a tendency to isolate. I'm like, I get really like horse blinders in a sense of
yeah.
like, I only see the stress in front of me. I need to figure this out. I'm going to go hide away until I figure it out. And then once I figured it out, I'll come back and like be with people again. So that's kind of the go-to behavior. And similar to what you were saying of like just being bitey and short and not patient. All of those things are reflected when I get stressed. And that's almost, I'm trying to think if I ever like vacillate and express that differently. And honestly, I think that's probably my go-to response pretty much every time. So
I also think like kind of what you were saying, going to extremes, I'm like, this is the most horrible thing ever and it's never going to get better. Like this is just the way life is going to be for the rest of my life. It's just horrible going downhill.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely get super short with people, and I use humor as a defense mechanism, and especially when I'm stressed and I haven't had a lot of sleep, I'm sure I've just made so many people like mad at the things that I say.
Same.
Because I'm just like, oh, you said one thing to me. You don't realize that my life is crumbling around me. So I'm going to say this like snap thing at you.
It's interesting that you say that though. And I know that it was kind of on the side, but like, at least for me, I've noticed that when I'm stressed, like my sleep situation influences so much my ability to be able to like handle that and deal with that. And it's like this compounding thing of you get stressed and then you have a hard time sleeping, but because you have a hard time sleeping, then you get more stressed, and it just kind of like keeps going.
It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I am the type of person that like this is like super unhealthy. Don't ever do this. Don't take my advice or my example. I will just like push through pain because I don't want to acknowledge it, and I don't want to acknowledge the stuff that's happening, which is super unhealthy. And then it's just like this repeated cycle of, then I'm losing sleep, or I haven't eaten really well, or I've stopped exercising, or it's the complete opposite of like, I also do this, where if stuff is going down in my life, I will just run until I cannot anymore. Yeah. And that's not like a healthy way of dealing with stress, but that's my typical response because sometimes I just don't even know what to do about it.
Yeah, I was talking to my daughter about it actually today, and she says the same thing, like going to extremes. You know, when she's super stressed, sometimes she'll just shut down, and just like want to crawl in bed and not deal with anything. But then she does the opposite extreme as well, where she's like, okay, I'm cleaning everything. I'm adding extra things. I'm, making food for other people. I'm just like overdoing everything, because it's almost like that control. Like if I can control everything, then maybe the stress will go away.
Yeah. Something that you mentioned too, again in passing, was like the nutrition element too. I find that one of the things that I'll default to as well is almost like trying to distract myself almost. And sometimes that's through scrolling. Like I'll just hop on, you just like scroll, and then like 2 hours later, like, I feel terrible. This didn't help at all. Yeah. And now here I have this problem still in front of me. Or even like my nutrition will go out the window, and I'll just like start snacking and stress snacking. And you're like, wow, this again did not help me whatsoever. And now I still have this problem, but I feel sick.
Yeah. It makes you feel worse for sure.
Yeah. I feel like everybody kind of like hyper fixates on that one thing.
Yep.
So what is something that you guys have done to manage stress, kind of like weighing too much on your life?
Yeah. I have a couple of different go-tos. One is being cognizant of my sleep, and I find that in high stress seasons, if I can prioritize sleep more, it's so beneficial, and something that feels outrageously weighty, at the end of the day, after a good night's sleep, feels a little bit more manageable in the morning. I find that like universally. So that would be one. Another one is I started, like, I picked up running, and like growing up, I hated running. But then realizing just the effect that can have on my ability to manage stress, and even just after a run, like feeling really good, and almost in a similar way of sleep, of just like I feel revitalized, and like I can get after this at a different level. So that's probably been another one. And then the third one that I would throw out, that's probably my most common thing. I picked up journaling, and that was another one that I tried on and off a lot until kind of like I found the way that I wanted to do it that was most helpful. And most simply, it kind of expresses itself in a discipline of I will separate myself and intentionally just get quiet and still. So like, at least for me, no background music, no side conversations, nothing. And I find that oftentimes I'll express my stress through like physical movement too, like I'll pace and that kind of thing. So if I still my body and everything's quiet, I just have my journal with me, and the feelings and the thoughts that rise up when I'm in that state, I'll just start journaling through them, and then that's a really clarifying exercise for me that helps me manage stress a ton. So,
yeah, those are great. For me, I think I can very easily get inside my head, and have those kind of looping thoughts where I can't quiet my mind. And especially in stress, I feel like it's really easy for me to embrace. It's hard for me to say lies, but yeah, they're definitely just lies, blatant lies. They seem like partial truths, but they're definitely just lies. And I can believe those lies and I can review those lies. And so for me, combating that with just truth, focusing my mind on truth, what is true in this situation? What does God say about this situation? I think trying to identify the lies and then specifically combating those lies with truth.
Which, can we even loop that to what you said earlier, Allie, of your experience in high school when, you're in that situation where you were managing that huge project and it wasn't going well. And like your thoughts, they immediately come up like the news is going to come and it's going to be Allie's a failure and it's going to be like, that's what they're going to report. Like that is a blatant lie, but that happens for all of us. And even though like in this case, we're kind of like making this hyperbolic example out of it. That is what happens. And like, even though they're silly and sometimes you need to say those things that are floating around your head and say them out loud to be like, wow, that is really dumb. Like, obviously that's not true.
Yeah.
And even in your case, like, let's say that it was a flop. Like, that doesn't mean you're a failure.
Yeah.
Right? So like that polarizing thought process is like to break that down and say no. And like, this is the truth is so huge.
Yeah, for sure. And even going along with what you were saying, identifying it, saying it out loud. I think so often I just want to hide from stress. I just want to like, if I just curl up and disappear, maybe it'll go away. But identifying, okay, I feel stressed right now. What is causing the stress? Am I anxious? Am I angry? Am I upset? What's going on? Identifying the emotion that I'm feeling and acknowledging it is super helpful. It kind of creates some distance from what you're feeling, because when you're stressed, it's like, I'm stressed. This is just who I am. I'm just anxious. I'm, crazy stressed. But when you just identify, okay, I'm feeling angry or I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, it kind of gives you a little bit more perspective, allows you to step back. At least for me, it allows me to just step back and create some space so I can kind of look at it. And like you were saying, realize, okay, that's a lie, and I can combat that with truth.
A detail in that triggered for me in my journaling process. I'll usually start off with feeling words because when you're feeling stressed, oftentimes there's like a conglomeration of emotions that come together there.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you start with emotions and then you can start to trace those to the events or the interactions or the relationships or the tension, then you can even take that the next step of like, okay, one, is there anything that I can do about this? Because sometimes we stress ourselves over things that's like, I don't have control here.
Right.
And there's also nothing that I can do about this. So why am I letting this get after me?
Yeah.
And then in some cases, like, it's like, no, there's a very clear actionable step here that's going to improve the situation and help my stressful disposition as well.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, I feel like when you call stress out, like it no longer has the power over you. And that is one of the things that I feel like I've had to really work on is being like, okay, I'm stressed, I'm acknowledging it, and I'm acknowledging that I don't want it anymore. Yeah. So, like, one of the things that I've had to do is, like, I hate doing this. It's like I have to tell people that I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And that is, like, it's not my biggest fear, but it is, like, I don't want to tell people that I'm not okay. I don't want to come off that I'm not okay.
Yes.
But just being like, hey, I'm super stressed, like, I don't need you to do anything, but I want you to know that.
Yeah.
And that has like really helped me.
And that's such a loving gesture to the people around you too, because whenever we show up to whatever spaces we're showing up to stressed, we're not showing up as our best selves.
Yeah.
And like, even just to be able to say that out loud to the people that might be taking the brunt of your stressful response, to say, hey, here's the thing. I need you to know what headspace I'm in. I'm stressed out. I don't even want to talk about what I'm stressed out by right now, but I need you to know that I'm trying to manage it, and just please give me grace in the process of that.
Yeah.
And like, that's such a gift to people that are around you, because they don't need to like try and like dance around like, hey, like, is everything okay? I don't know what to, it's like, no, I'm not okay, but I'm working through it.
Yeah.
And if you can be a part of like the process of helping me through it, I'll invite you into that too.
Yeah.
So.
It's huge too, because there's like a ripple effect, you know, because when we're stressed and we're affecting the people around us, but then they're like, okay, wait, did I do something wrong?
Right.
Or,
and then you compound stress in other people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it is a gift, you know, it is a gift. And I sometimes find myself, you know, hey, someone asks, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. No, actually, let me just say that again. I am not fine. Like, I'm not, you know, over the edge, but I'm struggling today. You know, it allows people in, and it lets people into your life. And, you know, it's hard because it's vulnerable and weak. It feels weak, you know, but it really is a gift.
But when you can take that step of authenticity, I feel like that opens up the door for other people to do the same too.
Oh, for sure.
In a way that strengthens relationships. And so.
Yeah. I think you kind of mentioned it a while ago, Amy, but just like asking God how to like process your stress and what is the truth that God is actually saying in that. I think one of the things that I love just about our relationship with God is that God wants us to give him our stress. But like that is really difficult, and it's not just like, okay, here it is, God. Like I'm just like passing the baton to you.
Yes.
Like if it was that easy, all of us would be not okay. So what is it like practically in your lives? Maybe when it goes well or when it doesn't go well, like what does it look like for you to give your stress and overwhelming fears or things like that? How do you give that to God?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of the thing with me when I imagine and practice giving my cares over to God, you know, it really is almost like what Caleb does when he journals, you know, just getting it out there, but getting it out there to God, you know, just making it a conversation to God. I'm stressed, God, you know, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I don't know what part, you know, I need help thinking it through. And sometimes I think, okay, well, I gave it to God, you know, I told him about it, I gave it to him, but so often I'm really quick to just pick it right back up, you know? So it's not a one and done thing. It's so often I have to give it to God, and when I pick it up again, I need to give it back over to God. You know, and if you're great at worrying, which I can tend to be, you know, I think you can also use that as a superpower to some extent, because, you know, anytime your mind is brought back to that thing that you're really stressed about and that you're worried about, you can use it as an opportunity to remind you to give it back to God. So you can become like a prayer warrior, because you're just constantly giving it back to God, constantly talking to God about what's going on.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts off of both. One, I think it's a killer question because God says, come to me, all of you who are weak or carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. And during one time in my life, again, just feeling like acute stress and just wanting to give it to God, I went all the way through the Bible and just traced back all the times that the word rest shows up. And the overwhelming conclusion that came out of that was that rest comes from God, like universally, Old Testament, New Testament. It was such a strong theme that was like, wow, there's really something here. So I think the question's killer. Along the lines of what you said, Amy, I think one, combating it with truth, and knowing that even like one of Satan's primary tools in our lives is lies, right? And like sometimes those lies come directly from us. Sometimes it is spiritual warfare, and we need to combat that with truth. So I'd start there, and even more descriptively, biblical truth. But then the other part of that too, like it's one thing to say, okay, this is a lie in my head and I need to swap it out with truth. It's another thing for those thoughts to sink their way down into your heart.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I think that transmission of what's going on in here sinking down to here is something that God can supernaturally do in our lives when we submit it to him through prayer. And I know that I've experienced that in my life. And the thing that makes that a little bit uncomfortable, I think, is because like that's not a 3-step process. That's like if you take this action, and this action, you're good. What that does is God forces us to go to him open-handed in a posture of surrender and say, God, I can't handle what I have right now, but I know that you can, and this is going to increase my trust in you, even though I'm really uncomfortable with it. And those are the spaces that God shows up, and it's really special.
Yeah. It makes me think about that's that Old Testament story where Judah there's like a bunch of armies coming out against Judah, and the king is like, we are powerless against all these armies. And I love, you know, they go to God with it, and they say, God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Like, I love that. And then later on in the passage, God is saying, you know what? This isn't your battle. It's my battle. You know, and I just think that we can kind of translate that into our lives the same way. You know, we don't know what to do, and it's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know what to do in this situation, but God, my eyes are on you, and I'm focused on, you know, learning from it, and, you know, having you guide me in what next steps I have. Yeah.
And like just another vein from that too, was reflecting a little bit on a passage in James 1 as well that talks about like, hey, like when trials come, oftentimes God's going to use those trials to refine you and to build endurance in you. So while in these conversations, I think obviously we're talking about stress as a negative thing. It's also important to note that, like, I'm not sure that a completely stress-free life is the goal.
Yeah.
Like, it's really about managing your stress and not allowing your stress to manage you. And when we step into our stress that way, I think that God not only uses it in our life to increase our dependence on him, but he's also going to refine us in the process and, help us more fully follow him.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that, if I'm being completely honest, I really have struggled with over, probably, so my junior year is when I, like, fully decided to trust Jesus. And probably since then of, like, actually being able to say that I'm stressed to God and, like, give those things to him. Because I don't like to tell people my feelings, and that also equates to God. Because I'm like, I still have to verbalize it then. I still have to admit that that's what I'm feeling. And it has been this, like, painstaking process, if I'm being honest, of being able to say, like, I cannot do this on my own. As much as I just want to power through, because that's, like, how I was raised and just my personality of, like, I can push through this until I get to the end.
Yeah.
Like, being able to have to just admit, like, I literally cannot do this on my own, God. Like, I don't know when you're going to show up, but I know that you will. And, like, it might come in 10 years or it might come in 10 days. But, like, I'm just going to say, hey, like, stuff is happening in my life, and I would love you to be there, God. And it's been so hard. But it's been one of those things that the more and more I do it, I'm like, okay, like, this actually, like, isn't terrible.
Yeah.
Which, and, like, I don't want to make little of your pain in that situation, because obviously it's legitimate, but, like, also praise God for using that in your life to help you follow him more. Like, God's redemption truly encompasses everything that we can possibly experience. And there is so much hope in that. Literally anything that you are possibly stressed about right now, God can and will use that in your life.
Yeah. And I think it's just being able to, like, acknowledge the fact that, like, the things that we go through, like, we're not alone in it. And God is there, whether we, like, recognize it or not. Yeah, it is. It's refining us. It's changing who we are as a person. And, like, there's always going to be another side to it. I'm a worst case scenario thinker. And sometimes I'm like, worst case scenario, tomorrow is tomorrow. Like, life will go on.
Yes. Yeah. I love the natural cycle of life, that each day we get to be awake for a certain amount of time, and then we get to go to bed, and we get to say, you know what, goodbye to this day and hello to the next day, you know, and each day is just kind of a natural, fresh start, you know, and just even thinking through what you were saying about how it's hard to articulate what you're feeling, and even to God, you know, to be vulnerable with God and to share it. I think sometimes there's no words, you know, and that's okay too. Like, there's no words to express what you're going through. And I find that I can just sit and be there with God. I can cry, and I can just be in his presence and not have to say anything. I'm not a huge talker, so I am silent a lot, and I'm happy to be silent. So for me to be able to just sit in God's presence, and, you know, I think about that verse that says, you know, when we don't know what to pray, we don't even know what to say, God's Spirit intervenes for us, you know, and prays for us. And I love, you know, thinking about how Jesus prays for us, and it's not all resting on our shoulders, which sometimes we feel like the world is resting on our shoulders, and thankfully it's not.
Yeah. So what are some of the, like, kind of like coping skills that you guys have used practically in your life when you're experiencing stress, or everything just kind of seems like it's compounding and it's overwhelming?
Yeah. Already mentioned a few, but I could probably add a couple more. Again, like, my go-tos are, like, I need my quiet time, like, badly. People that know me well can usually tell when I didn't get that quiet time in the morning, because I'm not as good of a person throughout the rest of the day. But you see in Jesus' life, regular times where he would separate himself. And I think when we follow that model, we can ultimately follow him a whole lot better.
Yeah, I think also just kind of knowing yourself well, And you might have to ask yourself some questions like, what kind of pace can I keep and still be healthy? Because for me, I can't keep a really full pace, really full schedule, a hectic pace. If I'm going from one thing to the next, I don't do well. I need that margin. I need that space where I can have some downtime. So asking yourself some questions about like, what fills me up, what energizes me, what drains me, and making sure that those things are part of your life. And I think even just practically looking at your schedule and saying, okay, I do a lot of great things and I have a really full schedule, but if it's not working for me to keep this pace, is there something that I can let go of? You know, even if it's a good thing, is there something that I can let go of that's going to free me up to just be able to function more in a healthy way and more successfully in life? So I think for me, that's a very practical way, is just looking at what I'm involved in and eliminating things as necessary.
Yeah, I love those. Well, thank you guys for spending the time talking about stress. I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced stress, or a lot of your friends are just dealing with stress. So if you have a friend that you're thinking of that like needs to hear this, send them the podcast. And we will be back soon to kind of unpack what it looks like to allow friends to be your support when you're stressed, and how you can be a support to those friends as well. So see you guys next time.